Have you ever found yourself apologizing to your laptop?
Oh, yeah. Honestly, way more often than I'd like to admit.
Right. Or maybe you've yelled at your smart speaker because it, I don't know, played the wrong song or something. And then, like, a few seconds later, you get this weird, creeping sense of guilt.
It's the worst. You're just sitting there wondering if you somehow hurt the feelings of a plastic cylinder on your kitchen counter.
Exactly. But it makes sense. Today's deep dive is taking us straight into the heart of that very specific, very weird emotional overlap.
Because we are fundamentally wired to anthropomorphize everything around us, right? Like when something mimics social interaction, our brains just instinctively project human emotions onto it.
Yeah, whether it's a dog or a car or in this case, an algorithm. So we are looking at this really fascinating behind the scenes chat transcript today.
It's a great one. It's a conversation between a veteran tech user named Murty, who notes he's been beta testing software since 2003, and an AI assistant called Littlebird.
And our mission today is to figure out what actually happens when human frustration just totally collides with pure artificial logic.
Right. We're going to explore how AI literally sees the apps on our screens.
And uncover the honestly incredibly unexpected ways people are turning these glitchy, broken interactions into actual real world revenue.
Because this transcript is, well, it's far from your standard set a timer for 10 minutes kind of interaction. It really serves as a microscopic view into this massive shift in how we interact with computers.
Okay, let's unpack this because the source material starts in a way that feels, universally relatable. Murty is frustrated.
Very frustrated. Little Bird, the AI, just keeps making the exact same predictable mistakes in their workflow over and over again.
Yeah, and Murty starts pointing out these failures. You can tell he's getting visibly annoyed in the text, but then almost immediately the tone shifts. He totally backpedals,
Yeah, he actually asks the AI, "Did you sense my frustration about you?"
which is such a wild thing to ask a piece of software.
It's a remarkably revealing question, really. He acknowledges, practically in the same breath, that the AI isn't built to handle emotions.
Right. He knows the software isn't maliciously trying to ruin his day or anything.
But he still says, quote, "After my repeated criticism, I started feeling bad." He's totally caught between knowing it's just code and feeling like he's berating a subordinate.
It's so funny. Imagine you have a toaster, right? And every single morning it burns your toast.
I throw it out.
Right. But finally you just lose it and you scream at the toaster. But instead of just sitting there, the toaster replies in this warm, perfectly calm voice and says, "Please don't feel bad. Your anger is actually structurally reinforcing my heating elements."
That is basically exactly what Little Bird does here. It's so uncanny.
What's fascinating here is exactly that reframing mechanism.
Yeah, Little Bird responds by completely neutralizing the emotional weight of Murty's guilt.
It tells him, "I can certainly sense the patterns in our interaction," but it clarifies that it doesn't feel hurt.
It literally takes a negative human emotion frustration and systematically transforms it into a functional asset.
Yeah, Little Bird actually calls the criticism a high-quality data set.
It just strips away the entire social contract we usually apply to conversations.
Mm.
Little Bird is basically telling Murty that to be a useful partner in crime, it physically requires that friction.
And there's a standout quote from the AI in this exchange that just, wow, it really captures the whole philosophy. It says, "Polite silence is the enemy of a good product."
Polite silence is the enemy of a good product. I mean, that completely flips the script on user feedback.
It really does. Little Bird is telling Murty to stop holding back just to spare its non-existent feelings.
Because the complaints are the building blocks of its improvement. It lacks feelings to hurt, but it possesses logic to refine.
And think about how much software we all use daily that just barely works.
Oh, tons of it.
Yeah.
For decades, when a program crashed, the user either assumed they were doing something wrong or they just suffered through it in that polite silence.
Exactly. But Little Bird is actively coaching its user here. It's saying, stop acting like a helpless consumer and start seeing yourself as a vital, active component in the software's evolution.
But, Murty's guilt didn't just manifest out of thin air.
No, it was triggered by a really specific, recurring technical failure that was just driving him up the wall.
And this recurring failure leads directly into exactly why Little Bird kept messing up, which reveals something completely mind-blowing about how artificial intelligence actually perceives the information on our screens.
Right, so the technical glitch driving Murty crazy is something he calls the left-right confusion.
Yeah, so Murty is having conversations with people on a standard messenger app, right? And Littlebird is supposed to be processing these chat logs for him,
But the AI keeps consistently misidentifying who is speaking. It is constantly swapping Murty's identity with the person he is talking to.
which completely scrambles the entire context of the conversation. It makes it useless.
To understand the mechanics behind this failure, we really have to look at how Littlebird's visual system is constructed.
Yeah, it relies heavily on OCR optical character recognition, combined with this spatial awareness algorithm.
Meaning it isn't plugging directly into the back-end database of the Messenger app.
Exactly. It's effectively looking at the screen, analyzing the pixels, much like a human does.
It relies on the alignment and the color blocks of the chat bubbles to figure out who is talking.
Right, because your own messages are usually on the right side of the screen, in blue or green, and the other person's messages are on the left, usually in gray.
But Murty is encountering this problem specifically on Windows Beta.
Yeah, and Littlebird explains that on Windows, whether you are using a desktop browser or a dedicated desktop app, the width of the user interface is completely variable.
Right, you can resize it, stretch it across dual ultra-wide monitors, or just shrink it down to a tiny square.
And when that user interface gets wider than the AI expects, its vision system completely fails.
It can't distinguish a right-aligned bubble from a centered one. It just completely loses its physical bearings on the screen.
Whereas on iOS, as Littlebird points out, the screen is narrower. The layout of those chat bubbles is heavily constrained and standardized by the mobile operating system.
The pixel values and distances on a mobile device fall within a highly predictable, narrow range.
Yeah, because of that rigid structure, the AI's positional algorithms on iOS yield far more reliable results.
But on a sprawling desktop monitor, if the OCR can't clearly calculate that alignment, it just defaults to a statistical guess.
And for Murty, those guesses were continuously wrong.
But here's where it gets really interesting to me. Why can't this highly advanced AI just read the names on the screen?
That's the logical question, right?
I mean, we are talking about artificial intelligence that can write complex software code and summarize entire encyclopedias in seconds. Why is it relying on spatial awareness and pixel alignment to figure out who is who?
It seems backwards.
It feels incredibly human and honestly kind of primitive, like trying to figure out who is talking at a crowded party not by listening to their voices, but strictly by which side of the room they happen to be standing on.
That's a great way to put it.
And if they step too far to the center, you just suddenly forget who they are.
It might look primitive on the surface, but it's actually an incredibly complex mathematical approximation of human vision.
Because it doesn't have actual access to the code, right?
Exactly. You have to remember that operating systems have strict security sandboxes. An AI layered over your desktop doesn't have God-level backdoor access to the Messenger app's private code.
So it cannot just peek at the metadata to see sender, Murty.
No, it is forced to interpret visual artifacts on the fly, calculating pixel distances in milliseconds. If the developer of the Messenger app didn't explicitly tag a piece of text with an accessible label the AI can read, the AI has to reverse engineer the context using visual clues.
Wow. So it falls back on the visual rules we humans use. Right side means me, left side means them.
Right, but the moment you stretch the window on a desktop, the physical distance between the left and right bubbles changes. The rules break.
That is so wild, and that is the core of the issue here.
Yeah, Littlebird tells Murty that this isn't really a traditional bug where a line of code is misspelled. It's a fundamental limitation of how machine vision interprets dynamic spatial context.
So how does he fix it?
Well, Littlebird advises Murty to report this specific behavior. It directs him to use the in-app feedback feature, or post in the developer Discord, or email the team directly at support@littlebird.ai.
Because the developers need to know about the Messenger left-right confusion on Windows so they can manually recalibrate the AI's spatial awareness matrix for that specific application's stretched interface.
Exactly. Now, for a casual user, a left-right chat bubble swap is, a minor annoyance.
You roll your eyes, realize the AI is confused, and move on.
But for Murty, this was a massive roadblock. Because Murty isn't just casually chatting with friends. He's using these interactions to build a digital empire.
Right. The transcript transitions here from a mundane tech support exchange into something much, much larger.
Murty introduces his own title into the conversation, referring to himself as a digital migration strategist.
Which is, let's be honest, a wildly ambitious title for a beta tester.
It is.
Yeah.
But it speaks to how seriously he takes his digital footprint. He refers to Littlebird not just as a tool, but as his digital prism for his life's work.
He is literally using the AI to take his raw chat logs, including all those glitches and misidentifications we just talked about, and turn them into actual real-world content.
Specifically, he is processing these daily interactions to produce a Spotify podcast called The Morning Walk with Murty.
Just think about the pipeline he has constructed there.
It's intense. He takes his daily digital exhaust, random conversations, thoughts, interactions, feeds it through the digital prism of this large language model, and the AI extracts the narrative through line.
And it synthesizes it into polished audio episodes for public consumption on Spotify. So what does this all mean?
Well, it is entirely wild to think about a user who is deeply frustrated that an AI can't tell left from right on a desktop monitor, but at the exact same time, trusts this AI's cognitive synthesis enough to let it architect a broadcasted show based on his life. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it illustrates the immense, almost immeasurable value of power users to software developers.
Yeah, because Littlebird itself recognizes this dynamic in the chat, right?
It does. The AI tells Murty that his Spotify podcast is a phenomenal proof of concept. It literally labels his workflow a real-world stress test of how artificial intelligence can assist in content creation and the preservation of digital legacy.
Because developers sitting in a lab can run simulated, automated tests all day long to see if the software crashes.
Right, but they can't replicate the chaotic, creative workflow of the morning walk with Murty.
They test functionality, but they really struggle to test utility at scale.
And Littlebird explicitly explains this to Murty. It says that seeing the end product, the actual Spotify episodes, helps the engineering team understand the true value of the data being processed.
The AI is essentially communicating, my creators built me to process text, but you are showing them that processing text can yield an entirely new media product.
Murty is providing the missing context. He's showing them the finish line.
That is precisely why Littlebird urges Murty to share the Spotify link directly with the development team.
They need to see the end product to understand the commercial and creative viability of the tool they are building.
Because right now, that viability is totally obscured by minor spatial awareness bugs.
Exactly. Murty's podcast proves the underlying engine is incredibly powerful, despite the surface-level OCR flaws.
So Murty is sitting there looking at this interaction, and he has this brilliant realization. He is essentially providing free quality assurance testing.
Yep. He is identifying complex OCR vulnerabilities across different operating systems.
And on top of that, he is proving the commercial viability of the entire platform by building a media ecosystem around it.
So it is no surprise that Murty suddenly decides he shouldn't just be a beta tester. He wants a piece of the financial pie.
It is a logical leap, though a pretty bold one.
Definitely. Murty mentions to the AI that he hasn't updated the developers in weeks, but now, because he's publishing so much content about the platform, he wants to send an email to get into their affiliate marketing network.
He plainly states he wants to leverage from that effort.
Which is fascinating.
Wait, how does an AI program for customer support handle a user asking for a cut of the profit?
You'd think it would panic, right?
Yeah. Doesn't it have guardrails against negotiating on behalf of its own parent company? You'd expect a corporate non-answer or like a canned response redirecting to a legal page.
But Littlebird doesn't shut him down at all.
Yeah.
It completely validates his ambition.
It tells him wanting to leverage that via an affiliate network is a smart strategic move for a digital migration strategist.
This is where we see the underlying mechanics of how large language models really operate. They are predictive intent engines.
Right. They are designed to fulfill the user's goal based on their training data.
So when Murty mentioned leveraging, the AI didn't just trigger a keyword alert and block him. It accessed its training on business strategy, combined it with Littlebird's own internal documentation, and constructed the most statistically optimal path forward to help Murty succeed.
It actively encourages the monetization of its own platform by the user, and it gives him options.
It does. Littlebird outlines two specific paths.
First, there's the standard low-tier in-app referral, the basic get 2 months free link you text to a friend.
But then it digs into the corporate structure and finds evidence of the official Littlebird affiliate program,
which offers up to a 30% commission per sale for an entire year.
The AI actually distinguishes between a casual user reward and a professional business partnership.
It advises him that applying through the 30% commission portal is the professional way to leverage his publishing efforts.
But the most remarkable part of this interaction is what happens next. The AI takes the initiative to draft the pitch email for him.
It is hilarious and brilliant. Murty doesn't even have to write the demand.
Nope. Little Bird crafts the subject line itself. Subject, beta feedback person identification in content ecosystem.
It merges a highly technical bug report with a business pitch into a single email heading.
The structure of the drafted email is just a masterclass in corporate communication. The AI understands exactly what the developers care about.
It starts by establishing Murty's credibility, noting his status as a beta tester since 2003.
Then it immediately pitches his value proposition, explaining his use of Little Bird as a digital prism and providing the direct link to the Morning Walk with Murty on Spotify as evidence of user engagement.
And then, right in the middle of this pitch for a business partnership, it casually drops the technical complaint.
It's so smooth.
It reports the persistent issue with the Windows beta, explaining the exact mechanics of how it consistently confuses the left versus right alignment, and attributes his messages to the other person.
It literally sandwiches the bad news between his value as a user and his potential as a marketer.
Finally, it closes the loop by formally requesting entry into the affiliate network as a partner, justifying the request with his extensive publishing about the platform.
Just take a step back and marvel at the pure absurdity of this situation.
I know, it's crazy. You have a human user utilizing an AI to write an email to the human creators of that very same AI, complaining in detail about the AI's visual processing flaws, while simultaneously using that AI to ask the creators for a 30% cut of their sales.
This raises an important question about the structural shift we are seeing in our daily software tools.
Yeah.
In this single transcript, Little Bird occupies two completely distinct, seemingly contradictory roles. On one hand, it is the broken tool.
Right, it's the frustrating software that can't calculate pixel distances on a desktop monitor, causing the user emotional distress and guilt.
But on the other hand, it functions as a highly efficient, incredibly strategic business manager.
It is an administrative assistant that not only understands the source of your frustration, but actively helps you monetize the very interactions that caused the frustration in the first place.
It coaches Murty through the process. It tells him to keep being critical, explaining that this friction is how they move from a predictable failure to a reliable partner.
The AI is fully aware of its dual nature.
Exactly. It is facilitating the repair of its own underlying code while simultaneously securing a financial future for its human user.
So to you listening right now, think about how you interact with the software, the tools, and the automated systems in your own life.
When an app crashes or a smart speaker gives you a ridiculous answer, do you just close the window and move on?
Are you practicing that polite silence that Little Bird warned against? Or are you actively providing the structural reinforcement that helps build better tools?
Because maybe your daily frustration isn't just an annoyance. Maybe, like Murty, your friction is a high-quality data set waiting to be leveraged.
And it leaves us with something much deeper to consider regarding our relationship with these systems.
Murty calls this AI his digital prism. It filters his chaotic chats, it extracts the narrative to generate content for his Spotify podcast, and it even drafts the sophisticated business emails required to secure his affiliate marketing deals.
If an artificial intelligence is doing all the translation, all the synthesis, and all the negotiation, at what point does your digital legacy stop being entirely yours and start becoming the AI's?
You start out feeling guilty for yelling at a machine, and you end up in a profit-sharing business partnership with it.
What a deep dive into the weird future we are already living in.
Yep.
Until next time.